The cold was relentless. It bit at her skin, gnawed at her bones, and seeped into her very soul. The alien mother, Zynara, clutched her child tightly to her chest, her thin, translucent skin shimmering faintly under the pale light of the twin moons. Her species, the Kryll, were not built for such harsh climates. Their homeworld was a temperate paradise, lush with warmth and life. But here, on this frozen wasteland of a planet, survival was a daily battle. Zynara's child, a tiny, fragile thing named Kylen, whimpered softly. His small, bioluminescent markings flickered weakly, a sign of his fading strength. Zynara's heart ached as she looked down at him. She had already sacrificed so much to keep him alive. Their ship had crashed weeks ago, leaving them stranded with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the dwindling hope that anyone would find them. But no one had come. The nights were the worst. The temperature plummeted, and the icy winds howled like a pack of hungry predators. Zynara had tried everything to keep Kylen warm. She had wrapped him in the few scraps of fabric they had, but it wasn't enough. His tiny body shivered uncontrollably, and his breaths came in shallow, labored gasps. Desperation clawed at her. She had no choice. She had to do something, anything to keep him alive. With trembling hands, Zynara began to remove her own clothing. Her garments were made of a lightweight, insulating material, perfect for the mild climate of her homeworld, but woefully inadequate for this frozen hell. She hesitated for a moment, her fingers brushing against the intricate patterns woven into the fabric. These clothes were all she had left of her old life, a reminder of who she was and where she came from. But none of that mattered now. All that mattered was Kylen. She piled her clothes onto the ground and ignited them with a small plasma torch she had salvaged from the wreckage. The fabric caught fire quickly, the flames casting a warm, flickering glow over the icy landscape. Zynara held Kylen close to the fire, shielding him from the wind with her own body. The heat was a fleeting comfort, but it was enough to stop his shivering, if only for a little while. As the fire burned, Zynara felt a profound sense of loss. Without her clothes, she was exposed to the elements, her delicate skin vulnerable to the biting cold. But she didn't care. She would endure any hardship, make any sacrifice to keep her child alive. The fire eventually died down, leaving nothing but a pile of ash and the lingering warmth of its memory. Zynara held Kylen tightly, her body trembling as the cold began to seep back in. She knew she couldn't keep this up forever. Without her clothes, she wouldn't last long. And if she died, Kylen would be left alone, defenseless against the merciless cold. As the hours passed, Zynara's strength began to wane. Her thoughts grew hazy and her vision blurred. She could feel the cold creeping into her bones, numbing her senses. She held onto Kylen with the last of her strength, whispering soft, soothing words to him even as her own body began to fail. Just as she was on the brink of losing consciousness, she heard a sound, a faint, distant hum that grew louder with each passing moment. Zynara's heart leapt with hope. She strained her ears, listening intently. The sound was unmistakable. It was the sound of an engine. Summoning the last of her strength, Zynara staggered to her feet, clutching Kylen tightly to her chest. She stumbled through the snow, her bare feet numb and bleeding, until she reached the top of a small hill. There in the distance she saw it, a small human-made rover, its headlights cutting through the darkness like beacons of hope. Zynara's legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She had never been so relieved to see another living being in her entire life. She raised a trembling hand, waving weakly in the direction of the rover. The rover came to a stop a few meters away, and a human clad in a thick, insulated suit stepped out. The human's face was obscured by a reflective visor, but Zynara could sense their concern as they approached. "Please," Zynara whispered, her voice barely audible. "Help us." The human knelt beside her, their movements gentle and deliberate. They removed their helmet, revealing a kind, weathered face framed by a thick beard. His eyes, a deep, warm brown, filled with compassion as he took in the sight of the alien mother and her child. "It's okay," the human said, his voice calm and reassuring. "You're safe now. I've got you." Zynara felt a wave of relief wash over her as the human wrapped a thick blanket around her and Kylen. The warmth was almost overwhelming, and she clung to it like a lifeline. The human carefully lifted Kylen from her arms, cradling the tiny alien child with the utmost care. "My name's Jack," the human said as he helped Zynara to her feet. "I'm part of a research team stationed a few clicks from here. We've been searching for survivors ever since we picked up your distress signal." Zynara nodded weakly, her strength all but gone. She allowed Jack to guide her to the rover, where he helped her into the passenger seat before placing Kylen gently in her arms once more. As the rover began to move, Zynara felt a sense of peace settle over her. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe that they might actually survive. The research station was a small, domed structure nestled in a sheltered valley. It was warm and brightly lit, a stark contrast to the frozen wasteland outside. Jack and his team quickly set to work, tending to Zynara and Kylen with a level of care and expertise that left her in awe. Kylen was placed in a specially designed incubator, his tiny body monitored closely as he was treated for hypothermia and malnutrition. Zynara, too, was given medical attention, her wounds cleaned and dressed, and her body warmed with heated blankets and nutrient-rich fluids. As she lay in the soft, warm bed, Zynara felt a profound sense of gratitude. These humans, strangers from a distant world, had shown her and her child more kindness and compassion than she had ever thought possible. They had saved their lives, and for that, she would be forever indebted. Jack visited her often, bringing food and water and checking on her progress. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He had a quiet strength about him, a resilience that Zynara admired. One day, as Jack sat by her bedside, Zynara reached out and took his hand in hers. Her touch was gentle, her fingers cool against his warm skin. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. "For everything." Jack smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "We're all in this together, aren't we?"